Imagine your husband brings you to a party hosted by his wealthy boss, and the man leans in close over champagne and says, "Tonight, anything you want is yours." You smile politely. You think he's being charming. But it's not a joke. Not even close. Let's start at the beginning. My name is Julia. I'm 39. Married for 15 years, no children, not by choice, just by life. My husband, Chris, works in real estate, or, to put it more bluntly, he runs in circles trying to impress people who treat him like wallpaper. He's good at his job, or at least he tries to be. But nothing he does is ever quite enough. Not for his firm. And lately, not for me. Chris and I are the kind of couple people describe as stable, predictable, comfortable. We have routines, calendars, matching mugs. We haven't kissed like we meant it since our 10th anniversary, and our arguments have turned from fire to frost, short, silent, cold. I don't think either of us would say we were unhappy. Just muted, gray. But that night, the night of the party, everything changed. Chris had been talking about it nonstop. Daniel's hosting it himself, he kept repeating, like that fact alone guaranteed magic. Daniel Foster, the senior partner of Goldworth Commercial. A man so powerful he didn't speak, he declared. The kind of man who walked into a room and people stood straighter without realizing it. Chris admired him obsessively. Not just professionally, but personally, too. His style, his confidence, his effortless ability to command attention. I'd only seen Daniel from a distance in photos at events. But I knew who he was. Everyone in Chris's world did. The invitation was gold-foiled, tucked in a black envelope. No RSVP card, because people like Daniel didn't ask if you were coming. You just came. The week leading up to the party was a blur. Chris panicked about what to wear. Got his hair trimmed. Even whitened his teeth. I tried not to laugh, but it was strange to see him care so much. For me, he hadn't noticed my new haircut last month. But for Daniel, he ironed his socks. The morning of the party, I stood in front of my closet for over an hour. Nothing felt right. Everything either tried too hard or didn't try at all. I finally pulled out a black silk dress with thin straps and a low back, classic, understated, but with just enough whisper of danger. I hadn't worn it in years. When I walked downstairs, Chris looked up and froze. "You're going to outshine everyone," he said, voice almost reverent. I raised an eyebrow. Good. The drive to the estate took 40 minutes. The closer we got, the quieter Chris became. I could feel his nerves like static in the car, fiddling with his cufflinks, adjusting the volume on the radio, checking his phone. "You okay?" I asked. "Just focused." "This is big." I nodded. But something in me was shifting. A low buzz of something I hadn't felt in a long time. When we pulled up to the estate, I actually laughed. It wasn't a house. It was a modern cathedral to power and money, marble steps, glass walls, and a front door taller than any building on our street. The kind of place where every corner screams, "You are small here." A valet opened the door. Chris handed over the keys like he was surrendering something sacred. I took his arm as we walked up the steps. Inside, the space glowed. Everything was gold or cream or dark wood. Jazz floated through invisible speakers. Waiters in perfect black and white balance glided with trays of champagne and amuse-bouches I couldn't pronounce. The room pulsed with wealth and control. Daniel found us within seconds. "Chris," he said, voice deep and exact. "Glad you made it." Chris straightened like a student at inspection. "Wouldn't miss it, sir. And this must be Julia." He turned to me. He didn't shake my hand. He took it, lifted it gently, brushed his lips against the back, not a kiss, exactly. "Just enough." "Stunning," he said. Not, "Nice to meet you." Not, "Welcome." Just one word. Measured. Intimate. I smiled, but my skin prickled. Chris beamed. "She makes me look good." Daniel's eyes didn't leave mine. "She makes everyone look good." And just like that, the evening tilted. The first hour was a blur of introductions and soft laughter. Chris followed Daniel around like a puppy, nodding at everything, trying not to drink too fast. I stayed by his side, smiling, polite, sipping slowly. But Daniel kept returning. Not in big gestures, but in passing comments, in shared glances, in the way his hand brushed my lower back just a second longer than it needed to. At one point, he offered to show us the wine cellar. "Special reserve," he said. "Only a few people ever get to see it." Chris lit up. "Absolutely." We followed him down a glass stairwell. The cellar was breathtaking, a curved hall of red brick, lined with bottles older than my marriage. Daniel handed us each a glass. "To good company," he said. "To the future," Chris added. I didn't toast. I just drank. The wine was dark and smooth. It settled into me like a secret. When we returned upstairs, Daniel leaned in and said it, so quiet, so casual. "Tonight, anything you want is yours." He said it like it was nothing. But he looked at me when he said it. Not at Chris. At me. And in that moment, something cracked. For the rest of the evening, Daniel Foster's words echoed in my head like an unspoken dare. "Anything you want is yours." It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it, not a flirt, not a joke, not even a suggestion. It was a fact. Like the brand of champagne he poured. Like the art on the walls he didn't have to explain. It was confidence so dense it didn't ask for permission. And something inside me shifted. I should have let it go. I should have smiled, thanked him, forgotten it like all the other soft brushes of temptation that pass through long marriages like ghosts. But I didn't, because something in me wanted more. I followed Chris through the rest of the party like nothing had changed. But every time I felt Daniel's eyes on me, across the room, near the patio, beside the bar, I felt my spine straighten. I started performing, I think. For him. My laughs became silkier. My glances more precise. I let the silk strap of my dress slide just slightly off my shoulder and didn't fix it right away. At one point, Chris was cornered by a group of mid-tier executives eager to pitch him deals they knew Daniel wouldn't read. I excused myself. Said I needed fresh air. Daniel appeared within 5 minutes. "Beautiful night," he said, joining me on the terrace. The breeze was soft, the scent of gardenia thick in the air. His wine glass was still full. "I didn't realize you were this charming," I said. "I only use it when it matters." "To seduce employees' wives?" I asked, smiling. He didn't flinch. "To remind people they're seen." My breath caught. It was too precise. Too exact. "I see you," he said, quieter. I turned away, pretending to focus on the lights below. "I think you see whatever you want," I replied. He leaned in. Not touching me. Just close enough. "That's the trick, isn't it?" I said nothing. When I turned back, he was already walking away. The ride home was quiet. Chris talked about how many people he met, how Daniel laughed at his joke about tax zones. I nodded, smiled, stared out the window. When we got home, he went straight to bed. Didn't even notice that I didn't follow. I stood in the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared into the empty dark. At midnight, a text came. "Daniel, I meant what I said." Me. "So did I." "Daniel, Thursday. My office. 7 p.m. No one else will be there." I stared at the screen. Everything paused. Then I typed. "Me. Send the address." The next 3 days were a fog. I moved through the motions, breakfast, laundry, helping Chris prep a presentation, but I wasn't there. My body was on autopilot. My mind was already past Thursday. I told Chris I had drinks with a friend that night. He nodded without looking up. At 6:30 p.m., I left the house in a fitted navy dress. Understated. Elegant. Like armor. Daniel's office was in a private building downtown, all glass and steel. A security guard opened the door without question. The elevator knew where I was going. Top floor. When I stepped in, the office was dark, lit only by the city lights pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows. Daniel stood near the window, 2 glasses already poured. He didn't say hello, just handed me a glass. Then silence. "I don't know what I'm doing here," I said eventually. "Sure you do," he replied. I looked at him. He didn't move closer. Didn't touch me. "Say it," he said. I hesitated. "I'm tired of being invisible." He nodded once. "I see you," he said again. And this time, I believed him. The moment unfolded like a slow collapse. Not urgent, not frenzied, just inevitable. His jacket dropped. My heels slid off. His fingers at the zipper. My breath catching. It wasn't about passion. It was about power, control, being chosen, being wanted by someone who didn't need to want anyone. He was precise, silent. He didn't whisper promises or sweet lies. He just moved like someone who knew exactly where every boundary used to be. And when it was over, I sat in his chair, knees tucked under me, sipping the second glass of wine like I belonged. He said nothing more. I left without asking what this meant, because I already knew. Chris didn't notice anything had changed. But I did. Something in me stayed sharper, hungrier. The next week, Daniel texted again. And again. Once at his office. Once in a hotel suite with a private key. Once in a townhouse that he said wasn't his, but he had the alarm code. I stopped asking. Chris became background noise. He'd vent about work, about how Daniel was pushing harder, colder lately. I bit my tongue to keep from smiling. It became routine. Until it wasn't. It was a Tuesday. Daniel had sent a car. I'd told Chris I was going to a gallery opening. He kissed me on the forehead and said, "Don't drink too much." I remember thinking, this is who we are now. But that night, something felt off. Daniel was distant. More serious than usual. Less indulgent. When we were done, he looked at me and said, "You need to end this soon." I blinked. What? This thing between us. It's getting dangerous. Because of work? I asked. He didn't answer. Just dressed. Handed me a wrapped box. "Gift for you. Don't open it here." I left confused. When I got home, I slipped the box into the back of my closet and found Chris sitting in the dark kitchen. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me. Then, "Did you think I wouldn't notice?" My stomach dropped. He stood, tossed a manila envelope on the counter. Inside, photos, printouts, screenshots of messages, times, places, hotel camera stills, Daniel's car, me. He had known for weeks. He didn't scream, didn't cry. He just said, "You burned everything for a man who doesn't even look at you when you leave." I tried to speak. He raised a hand. "I want you out by tomorrow." I packed that night, moved into a hotel. Daniel didn't answer my calls. When I finally saw him again, weeks later, it was at a conference dinner. He barely looked at me. Later, I heard he was being investigated. Someone had reported misuse of power. Chris? Probably. Daniel resigned a month later. I never heard from him again. I live in a condo now. Small. Quiet. Sometimes I catch myself checking my phone, waiting for a text that never comes. But I did open that gift. A necklace. Gold. Simple. On the back, a tiny engraving. "Yours. Just once." I still wear it. But never where anyone can see.